Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sober is Dope. I'm Pop Buchanan, and I'm here to talk about relapse today. I want to give you guys some short tips and advice or my perspective on how to overcome the devastation of a relapse. For many of us, recovery comes with a lot of excitement, new energy, and you feel like you could take on the whole world, right? But we go through different stages of recovery, and one of the most challenging stages of recovery is the protracted state of recovery, which is known as the wall. And the wall is where a lot of people, I mean, too many, really start to feel the effects of the addiction and the healing process. This is the period, this post-acute withdrawal period, is when the brain really starts to heal and you start to really feel the aches, the pains, the being tired, fatigued, irritable, and frustrated. And you will experience a lot of depressive symptoms during this time. This is usually 4 to 8 weeks or 8 to 12 weeks after you actually stop drinking. So initially, when you stop drinking, you get through the first week of detox, the alcohol leaves your system, and then you start to experience the euphoria of sobriety, the exciting points of sobriety, the honeymoon effects, where everything feels good and everything is happy-go-lucky, and you feel like you got this. Like, look, I got this. I don't have to go to meetings. I don't need this. My life is back in order. Everything is extremely exciting until you hit the wall, right? You hit this state that really does a number on you. Now, why do I recommend detox and rehab? Being in a professional rehabilitation environment allows you the benefit of having supervision, whether it's medical supervision, having peer counselors, and people around that could watch for the signs of post-acute withdrawal and be there to hold your hand when you get to this difficult stage of your recovery. But for too many people who try to go through it and do it alone, this is the point where most people would unfortunately relapse. This protracted withdrawal stage or post-acute withdrawal stage, or what we know as the wall, is really tough. And a lot of people throw in the towel because, one, you're dealing with a brain that's healing, you're dealing with depression or depressive symptoms, you're dealing with a lot of anxiety, and you're fatigued. It's just a brand new experience, and it takes a lot of love and nurture, and you need a lot of rest during this time, and you need some direction. So if you're home and you're doing this on your own and you start to experience boredom and all of these other symptoms, it's easy to imagine that relapse can be, the end goal to the end result of this process if you don't know what to look out for, and if you don't have proper medical supervision, or if you're not in some form of rehabilitation. So the first thing I want to say is, what happens when you relapse, right? You give in, you cave in, something leads up to that, whether it was the depression, the boredom, the anxiety. You couldn't really make it through this post-acute withdrawal stage, right? Maybe something triggered you. We talk about triggers a lot. Knowing your triggers. This is so important. If you don't know your triggers, then anything could set you off, and then you go down that dirty rabbit hole of relapse, and which leads you back to your addiction. So to find success in recovery, you want to be able to watch these triggers, and you want to be able to know what to look out for. So the biggest concept for me, and I want you guys to understand this, there's many stages of relapse. So you most likely was relapse emotionally and mentally before you actually physically relapse. This is important to know. I was very excited when I learned this because it put things in perspective. We start to tell ourselves little things, start to play with the idea. Maybe I could have one beer, maybe just one drink, right? Or maybe I could just go out one night, or I could go to the bar, and be fine, or I'm good now. I could hang around the old joint, or I could go out with drinks with my friends. But in early recovery, you really have to watch slippery places and slippery people. This is really important. And don't underestimate the power of your drug of choice. It's very insidious, and it could call you. It's going to be calling you. Alcohol and drugs are very insidious. You have to listen to that inner voice and know what to look out for. So be careful of these places. And in addition to that, ladies and gentlemen, you have to understand that if you're not eating properly, if you're not staying hydrated, if you're not getting enough rest, if you're not within a support system, if you're not doing the work, right, you could definitely relapse on multiple levels before you actually get to the drinking, the actual physical act of drinking or doing a drug, a choice. So I would say if you're depressed, bored, and you starting to play with the idea and the honeymoon effect of your initial early sobriety starting to wear off, and you start to notice that you're starting to get cranky, irritable, you're picking fights with people. That's another thing that people tend to do. You start picking fights, you start really lashing out on people, you start getting really angry, and it goes from being really fun to really challenging. This is all part of the process. If you can make it through the post-withdrawal state or this protracted withdrawal state, then it's most likely smooth sailing. But you're always going to have to live this day-to-day process where you're really doing the work to put your sobriety in focus. But through time, relapse gets a little bit further. It gets a little bit further away, and you get closer to the security of your recovery, right? It's not as if you're so worried about it, because now you know exactly what your triggers are. You have your support group. Most likely you're part of some type of peer group like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. Maybe you're part of a church, or you're part of some support system or program that can help you. So it's important. Let's do a quick recap. It's very important in early sobriety to have a support group, to watch out for your triggers, and to be aware of the wall, that post-acute withdrawal phase, or what they call a protracted withdrawal phase. You have to watch this period of time where the fun of the sobriety wears off and then the hard work begins. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, within your first year, I recommend you at least do an outpatient recovery rehabilitation or inpatient rehabilitation. Have a therapist, an addiction therapist, a counselor you could talk to, a talk therapist, right? For some of us, we have to address the depression and the mental health aspects. So you might want to see a psychiatrist, right? And your therapist could recommend you to a psychiatrist. Your psychiatrist could do something called a biopsychosocial, and that could check to see if you have any underlying mental health issues or dual diagnosis to accompany your addiction. So you could get the help for both, right? I believe that depression, anxiety, and these mental health components go hand in hand with our addiction. So you have to have systems in place to work with both, right? So my tips, here we go. What to do if you relapse. So you relapse. What do I do now? If you unfortunately relapse and you couldn't get through this protracted withdrawal state or post-acute withdrawal phase, I want you to understand it's part of the process. I want you to really understand that beating yourself up and feeling guilty is normal, but I don't want you to stay in this emotional state for too long. The shame and the guilt could really lead to a longer binge or a longer bend, which could lead to a longer rock bottom point, and a lot could happen between a relapse and rock bottom. A lot of people lose their lives between this little sacred period of time between when you relapse and then you hit this rock bottom, where you start to want to get help again. The goal is for us to close this gap of time. So you relapse, what happens? You're gonna feel crappy. You're going to be angry. You're going to be embarrassed. You're going to be really hurt and devastated. But the trick is to put all of that in perspective really quickly and to get right back on the wagon. So what does that mean? If you relapse, there's nothing wrong with going to the hospital and getting a medically assisted detox so you get the alcohol right back out your system. Instead of staying in the guilt and the shame, be proactive, do something about it. I'm empowering you guys. I'm giving you the power. I'm telling you that it's okay. There's too many people pushing the false narrative that after a relapse, you have to just let it all hang. You have to just, they're going to have to hit rock bottom again, and you're going to have to tear apart your life and go on this long journey of self-discovery all the way. We don't have time for that. All right. We're speeding up the process, right? If you're new and this is your first rodeo, yes, you may take some time. But for many of us, this could be your second or third or fourth or fifth relapse, and you start to feel discouraged as if you'll never really beat this thing. But you have to put it in perspective, and you have to understand that relapse is part of the recovery process. So get up, dust yourself off, and get right back on the wagon. Go right back to rehab. Don't be afraid. Tell your family. Be honest with the person you love. Also, be prepared. People in your life is going to be disappointed. They're going to look at you really bad, right? A lot of families don't get the necessary education on how to deal with a family member or someone that they love that's in addiction. They don't get the memo, so they don't know how to react. They're human. So most likely they're going to say their reaction is going to be kind of like this. How could you? Why did you do it? What's wrong with you? What were you thinking? Right? I'm so disappointed in you. This is what people that love you is going to say. This is how they're going to feel. That's part of the process. You're going to have to just really eat it and understand that that's coming from a place of love, and just say to them, listen, I understand that you're really disappointed. I just want to really get back on the wagon. So can you help me get back, right? You don't have to stay in the addiction for too long. But be prepared that people around you may be disappointed, and that's okay. Just reassure them that, hey, I have a disease, I'm dealing with this allergy, my addiction is tough, but I'm willing to get back on the wagon and do the work. You'll be surprised. If you look out for these things, you can win. The next thing I want you to know is it's okay to go to an Alcohol Anonymous meeting the next day. Say, hey guys, yesterday I relapsed, I'm starting over. The other thing to keep in mind is that there's so many different school of thoughts where if you relapse, you lose all of this time that you had, and that's discouraging. All right. So I understand that, okay, if I had a year and then I relapsed, so I had 365 days, and on the 366th day, I relapsed, and now I have to go back to day one. All right. Don't pay attention to the numbers of the time, right? Just pay attention to how you feel in the process. Forget the time. Right now, if you're in a relapse and you're sitting there and you're by yourself and you're beating yourself up and you're ashamed and you're angry and you don't know how you got here, the most important thing for you now is to say, okay, I made a mistake. It's part of the process. I have a year under my belt. So let me go back and get my help. Let me go back to rehab. Let me go back to detox. Let me go back to Alcoholic Anonymous. Let me call up my psychiatrist. Let me call up my counselor. Let me call a family member. Let me call my pastor, priest. Whatever that looks like, go back to the basics ASAP. Don't wait. Don't wait another month. Don't tear apart the town. Don't break everything, this reminds me of the song from Moby, Extreme Places, Extreme Ways, Extreme Places I have been that kept me up every night. I broke everything new again. All right, we get it. But you don't have to perpetuate the addiction longer than you need to. This is a new day, a new message in recovery. Get your butt back on the wagon. Fast. The faster the better. It's part of the process, so you can win. You relapse on a Wednesday, by Friday, your butt should be back into detox, right? That's my message. And I wish I knew this. I would have found my recovery earlier. It took me a lot. I lost a lot. And 90% of it was guilt and shame and embarrassment that I relapsed. I couldn't face the people that loved me. I couldn't face the people that trusted me. So I just kind of went into my own cocoon and I just kept drinking and kept drinking. And I felt like it was something wrong with me. Like, just me. Like, this is just about me. And I'm letting you know, if you're listening to this, I'm like you, right? We're born with this allergy. We're born allergic to alcohol. We have this addiction. We can't drink. We can't touch drugs. We should never have drank or touched these drugs. And we do, it will be hard pressed to stop. We would need medical intervention to stop, and we'll have to go through the spiritual process, and we have to go through a lot to get the alcohol back out our system. It takes work. That's why you're so discouraged if you relapse. You're angry because you did all of this work to get to your recovery, and then something triggers you, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, before I go, watch out for your triggers. Have a support system. Prepare yourself for the post-acute withdrawal phase. The wall, that protracted withdrawal phase. After the honeymoon effect of early recovery comes some pain. You're going to have to pay for all of that damage you caused to your body, and you're going to feel it. But this is the stage where you need a lot of rest. So you need to have at least a month or two where you focus on nothing but your recovery, not work, not making amends, not running around trying to prove to people you're back, and none of that. You have to just lay down, eat, rest, stay hydrated, do some light exercises, and let your body heal. All right, it's a lot of healing. And if you don't do that, you're going to be very depressed. You're going to be irritable, frustrated, bored, and all of these things combined is going to start triggering you to have these slippery thoughts, ideas, and then most likely you'll relapse. So to avoid that, prepare for that period. Lastly, just as to wrap it all up, if you relapse, be prepared that you're going to have some family and people that may be disappointed. That's okay. You're going to be disappointed. That's okay. That's part of the process. Don't let the shame, the guilt, and the embarrassment keep you in your addiction longer than you need to be. Get up, get out, be honest, call your support system, go back to the hospital, go back to your detox, go back to rehab, go back to AA. Remember, if you relapse on a Wednesday, we want you back in treatment on a Friday, period. All right, there's no need to go another 6 months or another year because we want you to survive. Too many people are dying between their relapse and their rock bottom. So before you hit rock bottom, you can find peace in your recovery and you can get out of the snares of a bad relapse. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Sober is Dope. I'm Pop Buchanan, 8 years sober. I'm really excited to bring this episode to you. If you like this episode, hit the notification bell, subscribe so you can get more, and stay tuned and be safe. Go forth and be sober. I'll catch you guys on the other side. Thank you so much. Peace.